I'd like to focus on is the device management piece, and then we'll move over to the network management.
Yeah, sure. So basically our journey with Meraki started with us attending a webinar similar to this one, and we received the free access point, and I started also deploying systems manager clients onto all of our computers because it started delivering me really rich information about what we had out there and what condition it was in as well. The Wi-Fi access point was so simple to deploy in comparison to what we had been using. It was just absolute dream to install, and you know, sort of we were thinking, well, you know, the first time I put one in, I was sort of looking, you know, a piece of paper turned up with the unit in the box, and it was, you know, you enter your serial number and you attach it to the network and you're done, and it was that easy. So from that point on, the decision was quite simple in terms of replacing our existing fleet of APs with Meraki as soon as we could.
Great. So I'm curious, I guess, about what your experience has been like. So you said the deployment was very simple. How are you using the Meraki equipment today, and what's the experience kind of been like both on the management side and on the user experience? What kind of comments have you gotten maybe from your users about what they've seen in the network since the change?
Mm-hmm. Well, for our users, it's very, very simple. They can ring us up. Any of our team can just dial into the dashboard, add a new user. The whole process only takes a minute, and then that person is up and running. And because they can now go into any of our branches and log into any of the Wi-Fi access points that are in any of the offices, so they can roam freely around and just enjoy using the Wi-Fi as soon as they get to one of the branches. We have the two SSIDs, one for staff and one for guests. So the guests log in through a Facebook login. They don't have access directly to our network at all. Their traffic goes straight out to the internet, and we manage that slightly different to our internal network. But it means our staff at the branches don't have to manage lots of guest user passwords and things like that. They don't have to get out pieces of paper with the login details or anything like that. It's nice and simple. And so I hope that covers it. Does that answer the question there?
So the other follow-up question that I have for that before we move on, and this is the last piece of this, I promise, is what comes next? What's the next few steps that you have around your network, and hopefully Meraki is a part of that, and if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. So the good experience that we've had with the Wi-Fi unit is giving us confidence to start using the Meraki MX line security appliances, and so we will be rolling those out in the future as well, just to give us additional visibility and also to protect our users while they're in our environment as well. So we'll continue to replace our any remaining access points with Meraki as we go a bit further. The great thing is that the Meraki story just keeps growing and getting better all the time. So you know, our old wireless unit is sort of stuck in the past. It's not going to get any better. That is what it is. So it's nice to see the Meraki solution continuing to evolve.
Great. All right. Well, with that, we're going to jump into the dashboard demo. And thank you again, Jeremy, for letting us use the property broker's dashboard for this. I think that's going to be very
That's
helpful.
fine.
Are there any particular? I'm going to kind of ask you to guide me to where you think the interesting parts are. So, is there any particular location that we could look at?
Yeah, if you look at the company North Island network there. So this is an overview of our network, what clients are currently connected. We've been trialing the Meraki switch unit, and so down that list there we see that there are some network connections that the switch has detected as well, and it's added those into our dashboard, even though those particular clients aren't actually running off that particular switch. It has still seen them on the network, and it's updating the information about those. If we go into the Wi-Fi access points, so under our wireless there off to the side, I can get a snapshot of basically all the branches that have Merakis in them, and it can show me the status. I can see at a glance that the bottom one in Te Aroha had a small outage. The other cool thing is if any of our branches, if the broadband goes down, for example, I get an email to tell me that the AD has gone down, and when it comes back up again, I get another email to tell me that it's back up again. So it just means that I'm aware of, things before people from those branches would call our team or notify us. So it gives us a good heads up.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point.
that's good. The other thing that we can do, if we have a look at the summary, it also shows us, what users we've got, what SSIDs are running, our top clients, and so on. Our operating systems, there's a whole bunch of information there that we just wouldn't have otherwise. So that's been very, very handy. It means in terms of making decisions, we've got a little bit more data to work with rather than just taking a guess at stuff. The other thing to mention probably is we allow our agents to bring their own devices to work, and so if we had a look at the other network that we've got, the system manager one, we've got our North Island sales consultant computers, and so we can see at a glance what model, what OS it's running. Our team here have got quite a lot of information as to the age of the computer, all of this before or when someone rings up. So if you even went into that first one on the list, that will tell us a little bit about that client, its usage. Most of the time we'll get a geographical location will turn up, but for some reason that hasn't this time. And what antivirus is running. There we go. Cool. So this is particularly useful. We can also see when it was last booted, because we'll quite frequently have people ring up and say their computer has some sort of issue. We'll ask them when it was last restarted, and we can see when it actually was. And so that way we can just prompt them politely to try restarting it again for us, and quite frequently that'll solve an issue without us having to delve into any more technical detail. So that's quite good. The other thing that this does is it also gives us a snapshot of all the applications that are running on a particular computer as well, and any of the computers on the network that we've got System Manager installed on. Should someone installs a program on the computer today, tomorrow morning I receive an email telling me what new programs have been added across the company over the previous day. And so our team here have a look through that list, and it means that if there's anything there that we need to educate people about, we can get in touch with them and make recommendations. If they've taken their computer home and their teenagers put some sort of file sharing software on or something that's not appropriate, then that opportunity to proactively talk to them about that sort of stuff. So that's been very handy as well.
Right.
Is there anything else there that I can touch on for you?
I mean, it's really your call. It's your network. I do want to highlight a couple of the things that you have mentioned and kind of touch on a broader strokes view of some of those. The first one being this clients page. So as Jeremy mentioned, this is sort of the one-stop shop for determining, what devices have connected to the network, and to some degree, what are they doing on the network. So as Jeremy said, you can see here we've got both wireless and switch clients, wireless and wired clients, and these clients on the switches don't necessarily have to be connected directly to the switches. They might be downstream through an access layer switch or some other device, but we can still see them because they're passing traffic through the switches. You'll notice up here at the top, we've got a bandwidth graph showing the amount of bandwidth that we're using, and we can see here the kind of overnight lull in the middle, and I can change the time frame here as well. But if I highlight a particular client, it's going to highlight the portion of that graph that's associated with that client. So these particular devices that are at the top of our usage numbers obviously are going to have much bigger bumps. If we scroll to, or if we go, let's say, down to one of these lower ones, they have a lot less traffic, right, as compared to some of these guys. You can add or remove columns too to see a bunch of different information here. And personally, one of my favorite things about it is the ability to the applications that are being used. So those of you who are watching carefully when we were on the summary reports page might have noticed that the top application listed was iTunes. So in here we see that same data, right? We see iTunes, and we again see that highlighted portion of how much of the total traffic was iTunes traffic. We can actually click and drill in and see a little bit of information about what is iTunes, if for some reason you don't know what iTunes is. And then we've got this information of, okay, who was using iTunes, what devices contributed to this traffic, and how much. So we see that actually a pretty large portion of our, almost half of all of our iTunes traffic is these two devices. And again, we can go in here and look at this device, see how it's connected to the network, see information about what it's doing on the network, primarily iTunes. Since I'm in demo mode, obviously some of this is blurred out to protect the confidential information or the privacy of Jeremy's team and their employees. But if I were the actual administrator, if I logged in as Jeremy, I would see the actual URLs and host names here. And I can see all sorts of policy information, network information about this device as well. I can even click on the topology and see how it's connected to the network. So here's the AP that it's connected to, and then here's the path out. Now today, because the other layers of this network are not necessarily Meraki layers, we just show these kind of generic icons here, and then we show the Meraki devices where you can actually click in, drill into that access point, get more detail. The more Meraki devices you have, the more of that topology is filled in with kind of these green icons that you can actually drill into and identify, oh, here's a path back to a switch, here's the port on the switch, here's how much bandwidth, go in, manage that switch port, reconfigure it, troubleshoot it, all that good stuff. The other thing I want to highlight, and this is something that it looks like, Jeremy, your team isn't doing today, and you may have reasons why it's not your preferred workflow, but some of you will notice that we have both switch and wireless here, right? You can actually add that Systems Manager, Mobile Device Manager to this same dashboard, as well as the security plane. So if you have more than one product, like Property Brokers does here. They have a switch and some wireless access points, or maybe multiple switches and wireless access points. That's all managed in the same dashboard, and you can add the security appliances in the MDM as well. And what that means is you can manage, instead of managing a device or managing your switching, your wireless, your security, your MDM individually, you move to this concept of managing your network. Usually that's a site, like a location, not always. But here in Meraki Corp, for instance, which is what we call the Meraki San Francisco office, or in our Sydney office, our London office, you have this what we call combined network that includes security, switch, wireless, and the mobile device manager all in one container, if you will. So you don't have to jump back and forth. Everything's in this single pane of glass, and you don't need to learn a separate management platform for your switching versus your wireless versus your security, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's, to me, that's one of the great values of this platform, is it brings everything to you in a centralized place, regardless of which product you're using or which products you're using or how many locations you have. So with that, I'm going to jump back into PowerPoint for just a couple minutes. So bear with me. So thank you again for that, Jeremy. I'm going to mute you for the moment, and then I'll probably bring you back on at the end for Q&A.
Cool.
All right, so product families. There are 4 product families. We've talked about each of them a little bit. The MR being the original Meraki wireless access points, or rather the descendant of the original Meraki wireless access points. That's our longest standing product, very, very feature rich. We've got a ton of cool stuff in the access points because we've had a long time to really perfect and kind of fine tune the functionality. Both 802.11n and 802.11ac access points available, including an AC Wave 2 access point that we released earlier this year. We've then got the MX security appliances, which are the firewall or Unified Threat Management. You might have heard the term UTM line, which basically means it's a firewall with a bunch of other security features built in. So it's actually got security and routing features. It's got iWAN, which is our SD-WAN, software-defined WAN solution, that allows you to send traffic over multiple paths, load balance traffic, make performance-based routing decisions, things like that. And it's got snort intrusion prevention on it, so SourceFire's intrusion prevention system. SourceFire now, of course, also being part of Cisco as of an acquisition a couple years ago. We've got anti-malware technology, we've got content filtering technology, we've got a bunch of different security and routing functionalities built into that platform. It's designed to kind of be an all-in-one security and routing platform. We've then got the switches, the MS, which come in a variety of flavors. We've got 1 gigabit copper, 1 gigabit fiber, 10 gig fiber. We've got layer 2 switches, layer 3 switches, aggregation switches, stackable switches, all different variants, almost all of which have PoE models as well. So you've got a variety of options there. And the cool thing about the switches is that they're managed through what's called the virtual stack. So if you have 1 switch or 50 switches, you can actually manage all the ports as if it's 1 switch. So it gives you the management capabilities of stacking, even if the switches aren't physically stacked, which is really powerful. So if you want to make a change to all your voice ports across 20 switches, instead of going to each switch and doing that, you just load up your switch ports page, you select all the ports across all those 20 switches, you make that change. The Systems Manager MDM, or EMM as we've taken to calling it, Enterprise Mobility Management product, is the other piece that Jeremy was talking about that actually manages the client devices. So Windows machines, Windows Phone, iOS, OS X, Android, Chrome OS, a whole bunch of different operating systems we can manage there, allowing you to get visibility into and also get a certain level of control over those devices, whether they're owned by you, the organization, whether they're BYOD devices where you just pull the profile off when someone leaves the location. There's a variety of things you can do there. Really powerful and really full-featured, flexible product. That team is sort of lucky in that they're not tied to a hardware or a firmware cycle. They basically just push out new versions of the app or new versions of the profile software, so they can iterate and they can innovate really quickly and just add new features and fix bugs and do all this stuff very, very rapidly. So that feature evolves at a rate that's really quite impressive, and every time I demo it, there's new stuff that I haven't seen before because they're always adding new things. And of course, all of this is combined under that cloud management concept, so you manage all of these through that cloud dashboard. So before we go into next steps, I'm actually going to break here into the Q&A, and then we'll come back to next steps. So there may be some questions here. In fact, I've got one here already for you, Jeremy, so I'm going to unmute you. And we've got someone wanting to know, how do your guests feel? How have they taken to using Facebook login? Has anyone complained? Have there been any hassles around that, or has it been a pretty seamless experience?
Oh, look, I'm not aware of any complaints or any issues at all regarding Facebook login. It has, as far as I know, it has just worked, and the team haven't, to my knowledge, received any calls about that. So, yeah, I think it's been a good solution. In terms, of not having to hand out Wi-Fi passwords and things like that. So yeah, really good.
Right. Follow-up question on Facebook login. I think you answered part of it, but the other piece is, has this provided any benefit to your social media profile? Have you actually seen an uptick in your social media presence based on that Facebook login feature being used?
Look, I haven't actually spoken to our marketing team about that yet, so I'm sorry I don't have that information as yet.
Fair enough. Um,
Yeah, I would expect that it has had to have had some sort of benefit in terms of, people realizing that we've got a Facebook page and viewing it. So yeah, that's something that I'll be finding out though.
Great. So a question from Quinton, and I don't know how much of this you can answer, so feel free to kind of answer whatever part of it you can. But
Yeah,
he would
sure.
like to know, how did the approval process go to purchase the Meraki equipment, and was it the only product you were considering? Were there a variety of products in play? And was the kind of licensing model an issue at all when you were working through the purchasing process?
No, the purchasing process rather than the rollout of the Meraki gear has been done on a site-by-site basis. So we haven't gone through any tenders or gone to market or any of that. We've got a number of suppliers that we can purchase Meraki through. So we were just replacing the gear when we had an opportunity to. So when we set up a brand new branch, they would get Meraki. If we were relocating an office, they would get Meraki. And in terms of the licensing and the cost, the Meraki gear, in my mind, is pretty good value because we've never had to revisit a site once we've put a Meraki solution in. And so to send a technician in a car to a branch that's 4 hours away and get them to do something and then come back, it's pretty inefficient. And so we've never ever had to do that with Meraki. And the ongoing licensing costs per unit, it's probably pretty reasonable for what you get in terms of the lifetime warranty and also the additional benefits that are being released all the time. They just, little things here and there keep coming through that we can benefit from. I hope that answers that.
I think it does. Great.
Cool.
So I'm going to take a couple of questions more generally about
Yeah.
Meraki or the Meraki products, and then I may jump back to you for a couple more as well. Uh,
Mm.
Chris wants to know if there are any plans to incorporate the UCS platform into the MX the way that's done with the ISR. I assume you're talking about integrated compute, Chris. There are no plans at this time. One of the things that one of the real Meraki focuses is around simplicity, right? Hopefully that's something that you've taken away from the demo and some of the stuff we've talked about today. So we try to avoid anything that complicates the management model. So slotting in an entirely separate product that's managed separately and all this stuff into the MX kind of breaks that model. So while I totally get why that's valuable in the ISR, and I have contacts out there in the industry who are using it that way and have a lot of success with it, to us that kind of dilutes the value proposition of Meraki because you're adding another kind of platform into it that's separate and doesn't fit into this centralized cloud management model, single pane of glass. So we're probably Not going to do that anytime soon. I never say never, right? I'm not going to make any promises one way or the other on behalf of the product and development teams, but there are no plans today that I'm aware of. Winston has a question around the MDM. So what's the cost involved in the MDM? Great question. Systems Manager is free for up to 100 devices. So if you're using anywhere between 1 and 100 clients in Systems Manager, it's totally free. You get all the functionality, everything's in there. Once you hit that 101st client, then you have to start licensing it. I don't have the pricing off the top of my head, but your best bet is to reach out to your rep, and the pricing is like per device that you're managing per year, and they can give you the specifics because I don't actually know it off the top of my head. So I apologize for that, but they'll have that info for you. Robert wants to know if it's possible to integrate with existing LDAP services. Absolutely. So you can on either the APs or the security appliances. You can point to an Active Directory server. You can also, on the APs, MXs, and the switches, use Radius as kind of a broker between your LDAP or Active Directory environment and the Meraki devices in order to do things like control access or do 802.1x on your switch ports or that sort of thing. I'm going to take one more, and then I've got a couple more, it looks like, for Jeremy. So John wants to know, are there any plans to fully merge, here, let me expand this so I get all of it, if it lets me. Nope. Are there any plans to merge the MX, especially the wireless component, into the dashboard with the other products more seamlessly? So John, I'm going to ask you to expand on that a little bit. The one thing that I know you're talking about is the fact that at least until recently, you couldn't combine, say, an MX64 or 65W that has the integrated wireless in with their products in a combined network. That's actually no longer the case. So if that's what you're asking about, that's actually changed. And you can combine an MX65W or 64W or the old 60W or the Z1 for that matter, the teleworker device, any of the wireless capable MXs or the Z1 into a combined network with switches and wireless. That does exist today. All right, so a couple more for you, Jeremy. One is, what was your most valuable resource for training and configuration?
For training and configuration?
Yeah, I don't know what the specifics are of what Michael had in mind with the question. I'm guessing he's asking, how did you get your team up to speed on how to deploy, configure, and use these devices?
Well, look, the whole thing is just so simple and intuitive that it took virtually, there's very, very little amount of training required. Basically, you could give anyone the box, an AP box, and within 10 minutes they would have worked through what needs to be done, and they would have been able to connect it successfully. So it was literally just spending, hey guys, come and have a look at this, and it was done. And so the other thing that we've done is getting our guys to attend some of the other webinars that are running. So last week we had one of the team attend the mobile device management, because we really want to lock down our iPhones and iPads and remotely deploy apps to them and remotely remove apps as well. And so after that session, our person was able to just get on and do it. So everything's very easy. The documentation is just absolutely top-notch, and yeah, I just wish everything else that we had to do was as simple as Meraki.
Great. That's what I like to hear. So I'm going to take a couple more quick questions, and I think we're going to wrap up and give you all a few minutes of your day back. Glenn says that currently his organization is using Meraki APs in all the branches, and they use the dashboard, but the dashboard goes through a sister company, and they want to split that out. So Glenn, the way you can do that is just reach out to our support organization, and they'll be able to work with you to split out those devices into a separate organization that you can manage independently. They do this all the time. They know exactly how to do it, and they can help you out with that. Jack wants to know if there's an outage to the web portal, what happens to the devices? So, Janik, I don't know if you want more detail than we covered earlier, or if you missed part of the session at the top. Maybe that you came in a few minutes later and missed the part where we talked about this somewhat, and that's totally fine. But I'll recap just briefly. The bottom line is, if you lose connectivity to dashboard for any reason, whether it's because you lose internet or because there's a dashboard outage, which really isn't likely because we have all these different layers of redundancy built in, but let's say it does happen, the devices continue to operate, they continue to serve clients, pass traffic, everything else. It's just that the configuration of those devices basically is locked into that config that it had when that device lost connectivity to the cloud until you get cloud connectivity back to go change it again. There are a few exceptions to that that I won't get into again right now. I don't want to, over inundate everyone with this stuff, but there are a couple of options and ways that you can reconfigure certain pieces in order to reconnect to the cloud. But that's the basic story there. Rod wants to know if the iOS app sends push notifications if the device is offline. So this is, to be clear, this isn't the Systems Manager app that Rod's asking about. This is actually the Meraki dashboard app. So there's a separate app for Android and iOS that you can use to manage your Meraki network or to monitor, really, your Meraki network. And yes, it can send push notifications if any of the dashboard alerts are triggered. And dashboard alerts are actually something that I think Jeremy highlighted or touched on briefly earlier when he said that they can get an email saying, hey, this device is down or something's going on. That's actually built into dashboard. So we have email alerting built in that will send you an email from the cloud that says, hey, this device has been offline for some number, for a few minutes. And you can configure all of that as to what alerts you want to get and who gets them. Those same notifications can come through the iOS app or the Android app as push notifications. BJ wants to know, if we upgrade a device to a bigger unit, can you transfer the licenses? So generally, not directly. There's not like a trade-up program, but our team will absolutely work with you to figure out something that works. One of our kind of biggest guiding principles is we want to do what's right for our customers. So if you do want to upgrade, we can usually find a way to kind of make that work for you so that you're not paying that kind of overlap licensing fee. There's no formal process, but they'll work with you to kind of, on a case-by-case basis, to find a solution that works for you. And we can be kind of flexible about that. All right, so I'm going to take one last question, and then we're going to wrap up 5 minutes early, so you get 5 whole minutes back. And that final question, roll the dice here. Let's see. So Andrew wants to know what the advantages of using Mac OS to control the MDM. I'm not sure I fully understand, Andrew, but I'm going to try to answer this question. So you don't actually use Mac OS or any of these others to control the MDM. You use the dashboard to control the MDM. There are differences on the client side in terms of what we can do with the MDM based on whether it's a Mac device, an iOS device, a Windows device, or else. That's just because of the EM hooks or the API options that those vendors have built into the operating system. So Apple historically has been very good about building a ton of MDM functionality directly into iOS. So you can, for iPads and iPhones and that sort of thing, you have a ton of granular control because Apple has gone out of their way to make sure that all those controls are built into iOS. Recently, in newer versions of macOS, they've added a lot of that same stuff, which has extended our ability to manage those devices. And now with Windows 10, Microsoft has sort of done the same thing and added a ton of functionality that they didn't have before on MDM, which has really massively increased our level of control that we have over those operating systems because there are controls that we can hook into that exist in the operating system that didn't before. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank all of you for joining, and I want to thank Jeremy for taking the time to go through this with us and be on the webinar with us. So thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Great. And with that, again, thanks so much for joining. Please don't forget to reach out to your rep with any questions. And the other couple things that I want to mention as possible next steps, just so you know where to go from here, are we have an evaluation program, meraki.cisco.com/eval. This is a great opportunity for you to try any of this equipment. You'll get potentially the AP for attending the webinar, but if you want to try a different model, you want to try a switch, you want to try an MX, this is a great way to do it. We have a free trial support team that's dedicated to providing support for just those evaluations, and they do a phenomenal job. great resource for you if you want to try that out. If you want to know what's new with Meraki, meraki.cisco.com/blog is your best bet for anything new in terms of new features, new products, just news about the company in general. It's usually the first place that we post anything new that's happening with Meraki, so it's a great thing to keep an eye on. You can subscribe to the blog and get email updates if you like, or you can just go and look at it whenever you're curious. And finally, your number one resource for all things Meraki is, of course, your Meraki sales rep. As we mentioned earlier, if you don't know who your rep is or you don't have a rep yet, meraki.cisco.com/contact will give you a way to get in touch with that rep. And don't forget to call them and confirm your shipping information, or email them and confirm your shipping information in order to make sure we get you that free AP if you are eligible. So one final time, thank you for joining and have a wonderful rest of your day.